Okay, this is the vlog for July 1st. New month. Um, and I am definitely feeling better. I think last night I mentioned that I'd come to realize that the fever had gone away, and now most of my other symptoms have also dissipated, which is an extraordinary relief, as you might imagine. Because those were all the really terrible things about being sick. However, I am left in sort of a difficult position. This bug ran its course through my system over the course of about 3 full days. In some ways, 2.5, but I did actually sort of notice it on Thursday night. And when I finally realized they had subsided, it was Saturday night. So Thursday night, Thursday to Friday night, Friday to Saturday, or Thursday to Friday night, Friday to Saturday night. No, Saturday night. Oh no, it was Wednesday night. God. So this is how bad this illness is. It's affected my ability to make measurements of time. Wednesday night is it was after I had recorded the vlog where I described the Dynostria campaign setting. And I was so jazzed and everything had been going great. And then I started to feel very fatigued as I went to bed a little bit early. I think I went to bed at like 9 o'clock, and that was when I noticed I had a fever. So yeah, more or less 3 days of very serious illness. I definitely would have taken off all those days from work if I had been working. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows right now, because having lost at this point at least 6 pounds of water weight over the course of 3 days, and not eating terribly large amounts of calories in the same time, I've been left physically weak and slightly dizzy even at times when I'm walking around. Although today has just been an improvement over time. I had a full lunch and felt quite a bit nauseous after that. But then, and nauseous all afternoon. I tried to take a nap and couldn't sleep. But I'm going to try and stay up to a more reasonable time. It's already 8:30 now. All I need to do is stay up till about 10:30 to go to sleep, and that'll be closer to my normal bedtime. And I was able to have most of a salad for dinner. And I think that was what I really needed, was some greens. Hopefully with some vitamins that are going to be helpful to me. But yeah, the road to recovery is not always a quick one. My real hope is that, I think I mentioned this a few days ago, that I'll be over this and eating full meals and moving around easily by the 4th of July, so that I can go and spend time with some family friends on the 4th, because I was slightly sick on the 4th of July last year, and I would very much like to watch the fireworks this year if possible. But we'll see. It's up in the air right now. I watched a very interesting, I don't know if retrospective is the right word, analysis, critique. No, analysis is a good word. There's a YouTuber named Eyepatchwolf who does videos explaining a lot of cultural things and what he is able to gain from them. And he has a very soothing voice, and he makes a lot of poignant points. He has a habit of sometimes saying the same thing in different ways multiple times in these videos, which tend to be very long. The two that I've seen so far were at least 25 minutes each. But the one I watched today was about the Yakuza series, and it actually was very informative. I think that's the trick, is that his videos are much nicer for people who might not know a lot of things. The first one I watched was about Dragon Ball Z and its impact on the anime industry, especially in the West. And whether you like Dragon Ball Z or not, its impact is profound. It had a huge influence on all the anime that came after it, and how they were marketed in the US. Yakuza, on the other hand, has not enjoyed the same kind of success as something as ubiquitous as Dragon Ball. When talking about anime, Dragon Ball is one of the ones that a lot of Westerners think of first, or at least did about a generation ago. These days, it's usually something else, like maybe Naruto or others. But Yakuza is a game series that got started right after a bunch of terrible business events for the Sega game company, where their launch of the Sega Saturn just went really poorly, and their follow-up Dreamcast system, which was a better system, was also not as well received. And in particular, the Shenmue game that came out for the Dreamcast, which was like its big IP, had an incredible, like, nearly $50 million budget in the year it came out, which was like 1999. It might have been 2000 or 2001, but that was just absurd. It was the most expensive game ever made at the time, and it sold well, but when you cost that much to make, it's very hard. Like, they'd have to sell 50 million units, or not 50 million, but 5 million units at the price that they were selling those games at, to break even. And that's just break even. That's not even making a profit. And on that system, that was just not going to happen. So Sega saw this as writing on the wall, and they said, okay, we're not going to make gigantic open world games, and we are not going to make systems. We're going to make games for other people's consoles and become a third-party only company. And at this point, they're mostly a publisher that has a lot of third-party development studios under their, a lot of what they do is actually they just have really good IPs, intellectual properties that they have the rights to, and then they'll hand those IPs to smaller studios. For example, Alien Isolation was made by the same people that made the Total War games, but it was published by Sega, because Sega has had the Alien intellectual property for years now, at least a decade. And Alien Isolation was made by British people. Let me make that clear. Creative, I can't remember exactly what the name of the studio is. They're all located out in Britain, in the UK, and which fits because Ridley Scott was a British director, and so there's a little bit of English DNA in Alien, I think, from the get-go. But it is not a Japanese video game, but at surface value, at surface glance, it looks like it's a Japanese video game because Sega's a Japanese game company. So, on the other hand, Yakuza is an incredibly Japanese game. It's an incredibly Japanese series. I've heard it described as the most Japanese video game series in history, but I've never played it. But Eye Patch Wolf's video framed it in such a way that it made me think about it in very careful terms that I had not before. I sort of assumed that it was slapstick minigame nonsense with a general Yakuza sort of window dressing that was thrown out the window the moment you actually started playing the game. Big serious "Ora!" With the pop collars walking around. just basically, being the most serious kinds of thugs, doing karaoke, hosting, doing a host cafe or maid cafes where maids will come and serve you and call you master. An incredible fishing minigame, but that was the thing that caught me, is that iPatchWolf mentioned that he just walked down to the end of a dock in one of these big cities that you end up having access to in the game. He had no reason to, except that he saw an NPC at the end of the dock and thought, well, what's their story? And he walked down and talked to the NPC. Suddenly, this entire minigame experience that is, in many ways, more fleshed out than full games in other franchises, is unlocked to him. It has its own art assets, its own sound effects. It has bosses with their own theme music not used anywhere else in the game, which he would have completely missed if he didn't just walk down. It was a completely optional section of the game. But a small team obviously spent weeks or months working on this particular part of the game. And I have to, give respect to something like that. Yakuza, if nothing else, has made me clear that it's a series where the creator and everybody that works on them feels very strongly about them and loves them. And that is not always something that you see in the gaming industry. Some people do feel sometimes like they're just making games for a paycheck, but every now and then you run into a game series where it's like, yeah, the people that work on these games just love making these games. So I've downloaded it, and I'll probably be playing it tomorrow while the guys working on the house do their thing. So until then, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.